Mike's a bad guy. That's the one like thread that makes it all make sense. That he would make sure that we covered Brad Tebbett and keep him on staff, not do anything about the adultery, be okay with everybody's lives being blown up, dismiss us like we were nothing. To this day, he has not faced us. To this day, almost 3 years in.
Wake up and win. Wake up and win. Wake up and win. Wake up.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Wake Up and Win podcast. It's Blaise and Christina.
Hello.
Excited to be with you guys today. We've got a special treat for you with a member of the AG, the advocate group, and a former executive leadership team member of IHOPKC, Elizabeth Herder. Today's episode is great. What were your thoughts, babe?
Yeah, it was incredible. Elizabeth is amazing. She just shared so much just insight, into what goes on behind the scenes and stories, and also just so much wisdom.
Yeah.
Too. So I really appreciate her and her coming on and sharing her perspective.
Her experience of actual events that have taken place over the last 5 years and the behind the scenes, even the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. She even shared about whenever my situation happened.
Yeah, she remembers whenever Blaise wrote his blog and then whenever he reconciled too, and what they were saying behind the scenes. So that was pretty interesting to hear too.
It was interesting. Just overall to hear kind of the perspective of somebody that sees the behind the scenes, why they do what they do. And I think the key phrase in everything for me is when she said, I finally realized that if I pulled the thread of Mike is not perfect or Mike is a bad guy, that was the one piece that made everything make sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What did you think about that?
I thought that was a great way to put it, because we're all just over here like, how is this real? How is this happening? How is this real life? Because everybody thinks he's so amazing. But if you take that away, then you're like, oh, that's why this entire thing is structured this way, and there's so much abuse and manipulation, and just everything makes sense. Once you can accept that, then you can accept everything else, I think.
You understand why they do that, why they view Matthew 18 the way they do, why they do Matthew 18 the way they do, why they do so much cover up, what they would just call covering for sins. What were your thoughts on the kind of idea of her? She truly believes the best about all these ELT members.
All of the still, that are still there, not necessarily the past ones. I don't think we touched on that. But the ones that are still there, she believes that they want to do the right thing. Yeah, I mean, that's her opinion. I had a little bit of pushback and was confused, because I don't see that. I don't see that happening in everything that they're saying, doing, showing, retweeting. It has not been that over the 6 months. I don't see that.
But it seems like from her perspective of knowing them.
And she's had obviously more interactions with them. She knows them. Yeah. She knows their heart. She knows what's going on behind the scenes. She has talks with them. So she has a better view of what's going on than I do.
Yep.
But from what I see on stage and on Twitter, and I really mean the things that Isaac would retweet of Eric Voles, of the I'm Not a Victims, of the, all of the stuff that he would retweet. It doesn't seem to me that he's in a place that is wanting to do
welcome
the right
a third
thing.
Party to investigate everyone.
Yeah,
etc.
it doesn't seem that way. But anyways, you can hear her perspective on that, which I appreciate and respect.
Yeah, which I think, again, she kind of gives that perspective that's a 20-year perspective of being around these people, leading with these people. And there's many tears shed even during this podcast. I mean, honestly, it was gut-wrenching. You're not going to hear a lot from us during this podcast. She talks for a long time because we wanted her to share her story. She is a woman advocate in this situation, and frankly, she's one of the first, if not the first, whistleblower to start off the whole process with Mike Bickle's son having an affair, and her going and trying to do Matthew 18 with Mike Bickle and it not working, him not actually opening up to that meeting, him not being available. She said, I could meet with Mike at the drop of a hat usually, and then once this started, he would not meet with me.
She hasn't seen him face to face since then.
In 3 years.
Yeah, it's insane. And also, I do want to say, you guys sent in some really incredible questions on Elizabeth's Facebook and some on Twitter, questions for her that I had every intention of pulling up and reading and asking her. But we didn't even get to those because she just had so much to share, and we were just kind of like on a roll in the conversation of hearing her story.
So we'll do part two.
We do want to have her back and like do like a Q&A and just do those questions. So if you have, more of those, you can leave them in the comments too, and we can do that another time.
Yep. Lastly, during this podcast, you're going to notice a little different format. We have her on video the whole time, off and on, and then our video like tweaked out or something. So you're going to see every time we're talking, you'll see like a picture of us, so it'll be a little old school.
Yeah,
but
we forgot to record or it was my fault. I pressed the wrong button. It was my fault.
No,
I didn't press that record
it's
for our
not
videos.
you.
So,
It's me.
it's just, it is what it is. But you get to see her, and that's the important part. You guys are tired of seeing us anyways.
Yeah,
just like annoying grifters. So you get to see her, and it's really incredible because when we talked about it afterwards, we're like, oh shoot, we screwed this up. Should we redo it? We literally talked to her for 2 hours. We're like, are we gonna ask her to redo this? But then when we watched it back, it's like, no, this is actually really
so
good.
Valuable. This is, we've done so many with so many different people, and we're just starting to really interview people.
I was gonna say we haven't done so many different people. This is only our third one, so
I guess what I'm saying is we've done so many stories, we've covered so many stories, but this one was just so powerful and so impacting to listen to. What I would call her poised fire. She brings the heat, but she's very poised and she's very caring. And so for those of you who are just coming across the IHOP story, and for those of you that have friends, family that say, there's no way any of this is true, or this is all just, people gossiping, send this video to them and just say, listen to this woman's story. She worked with Mike for almost 20 years, met with Mike on a weekly basis, saw the behind the scenes. And I'm telling you, this story is a must-hear story for accountability in the body of Christ, accountability obviously for Mike Bickle, but accountability in the body of Christ so that we don't duplicate these leadership styles. And it's not just Mike's leadership style, it's the way the culture of leadership throughout the charismatic body of Christ tends to lean. And so I really think this is an exposure that's going to really be helpful.
I think so too, yeah.
All right, that said, let's go dive right in, enjoy the show. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. So honored to be here. I feel like you guys are a window, kind of a portal into so many people's hearts and minds. And, I know that people are going to be watching and listening. And so I'm honored to have a voice that can speak on this. And I hope bring some clarity and comfort to people. I think answers bring comfort a lot of times.
For sure. Well, if you could just kind of kick off by just introducing yourself, tell everyone who you are, kind of how you're connected to IHOPKC. I know you go way back and you've been on the executive leadership team. Tell everybody who you are and kind of what your place is in the IHOP world, and then what it's become now that this scandal is broke.
That's the really juicy part. But okay, yeah. I moved here in 1997. I am old. I want to say I'm older than I look, but it's not really the right thing to say, is it? But I'm 50 years old. And so yeah, I came in 97.
Wouldn't put you past 29.
That is the right answer, please. Excellently done. So 1997, I come for Bible school with Metro. This is pre-IHOP. This is the church, right? And they have Grace Training Center. It's the same Bible school that Dwayne and Jen Roberts came for, Misty came for, quite a few of kind of the OG people came for this. And so I was working and in school when IHOP started in 1999, but it was my whole world. I was not on staff because I had a corporate job, and there's a whole story there of how the Lord kind of just hijacked my life and put me in business. And I was having the time of my life, but all of my friends were IHOPers, and I was there all the time. I was there for the dedication, night one. I was in the trailers. I then left I was recruited to a company in California, left for a couple years. And in 2002, Mike reached out and asked me to consider coming back to IHOP. So now IHOP is 3 years old, 99 to 2002. And he asked me to come and be on the business end of things. So that's why there are definitely a lot of people might not recognize me, or people recognize me as the money lady, the one who asked for money. Super great. But yeah, so I came in to take care of business operations stuff. And at that point, there were just a bunch of faithful, wonderful people running like the bookstore and the coffee shop. And, we have just these hilarious stories like Mike, finding out that John G. Lake's book, is on sale for $5, the one that's like 5,000 pages or whatever. And, I'm thinking, what would be a great idea is if we buy 5,000 of those. That'd be fabulous. So we had the bookstore had like $1 million in inventory on the shelves, and was like $1 million in debt. It was really a wreck. So they asked me to come in and help, and by God's grace, I did. And so that was my entry. I never did an internship. I was immediately on the leadership team. And, funny, I have heard recently some of the like kind of current leaders that were actually probably in high school then were like, Elizabeth was a lead. Is Elizabeth a leader? Was she a lead? I'm like, okay, you were in high school. Yeah.
That's funny. That's hilarious.
So yeah, I've been here the whole time. Got married in 2005. I started our marketing department, which is also a hilarious story because I just thought, gosh, everything's so ugly. And I went to Mike and I was like, these brochures, he had this thing for producing brochures in neon. I don't know if this was before your time, Blaise, but he thought the bigger the words and the more bright, so just everything was hideous. And I said, how about we have a logo? We should probably like get a brand book, So I started working with really brilliant guys. I cannot take credit for the Flame logo for designing it, only for the concept of a couple of us getting together. And I was the director of the department. Like, we need a logo.
So was the early logo going to be like Saved by the Bell type of lettering thing?
No, Mike didn't know anything about a logo. He's like, well, we don't need a logo, just International House of Prayer. So that logo that now, pierces me. So I was director of marketing, and then realized about 2 years into that, I'm like, people send donations. I don't think we say thank you. I just don't, I think we're, how about we do something like that? So I began as the director of development and started taking care of our partners. And that was my favorite thing that I did. And I did that for most of my time at IHOP, from about 2005 until I resigned in 2015 when I had my fourth baby. So in addition to being, part of the ELT, that group went by different names over the years. Sometimes it was the executive management team, depending. Yeah. So on that, and then I was actually asked to be on the board of directors and we all served 3-year terms. And so I did that as well during that season. So my only experience with IHOP is in leadership, but I wasn't teaching Bible school classes, right? I wasn't section leading. I wasn't seen in the prayer room doing that. I was raising millions of dollars, literally. And so that's one of my great, it's to kind of take a heavy turn. It's a very heavy thing to know how much I contributed to building the empire. I did, and, there were two things, I'm kind of bunny trailing. There were two things that Mike and I always butted heads on. And one of them was the money for the stipends, for people and how little they were living on. I always contended that it wasn't sustainable and it shouldn't be. And we needed to pay people more. But anyways, I have great grief over how much.
What was that conversation like, though, whenever you suggested that or mentioned that? What was his response?
The one that's the most poignant to me, I brought it up many times. The one that's the most poignant to me, he was not happy at all. It was right before a board meeting. and I have my big board binder. The kimono is open. If you know that term, like I can see everything. I can see every little tiny stipend. I can see larger ones. And I came and I said, I personally believe, I'm going to say something really strong. I think the Lord is against us until we fix this. These people cannot live on this. And to expect people to be able to raise support from many of these are young people that they came, it's not like they had a whole life of vibrant professional friends,
Right.
No.
right? Before they came. We have to fix this, and we should, because our payroll at one point was $10 million a year.
Wow.
So imagine how many people that spread among. And there were so many unnecessary, anyways, my point was, can we just pare down to the most necessary people and support them and give them a living wage? Anyways, that's kind of a bunny trail, but
Wow.
that was one of my contentions with, and the other one was about sin and not dealing strongly with it. How ironic.
Money and sin, or they're lumped into the same in some ways, or they can be. Wow, it's really enlightening to hear that, because of being there from 2008 to 2012 on full-time staff, doing 3 months of the internship, doing full-time staff for the other 4 years and 3 months, whatever it was. And just seeing so many 18 to 25-year-olds live like trash. I mean, literally, these guys they'd be sharing, there'd be houses, and there'd be like 5 guys splitting one room, and their rent for the month would be like $100 a month, and they could barely pay that. And then they would wait, they'd show up at 6 a.m. or the night watch would wait and get their free Panera bread at 6 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays or something. And, I came from a ministry background. I came at age 25. And so I had a big network. When I came, I had full support raised. But I would watch people, like you said, you got 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. They just don't have any type of life like that at all. And it's just interesting to hear that conversation that you brought to Mike, because it shows how disconnected he was from the world of all these young people, because they were starving artists, basically. So many were. So it's very, very insightful. Do you have any thoughts or questions on that?
Well, so what did he say though back? Like, was he just like, was
yes,
he like,
great.
well,
He did. Well, he got really irritated at me, and he basically threw it back at me and said, what do you want me to do? What's your big plan? So I'm going to start paying singers and musicians a living wage. What about the accountant? What about the lady over here? What about the janitor? What about all these people? And he basically said, you try it, Lizzie. He called me Lizzie. You try it. Like, your idea won't work. It's just kind of like, it doesn't work. This is the only way it works. It was very, bizarrely communistic. It's strange to use that word, but kind of like whoever, who needs it gets it. And he talked about the bread line, which was a real thing outside of his door, because so he had a fund so that he could give away money whenever, it was needed. He was very generous. That's real. Mike gave away a lot of money. He should have. People were doing, know. So yeah, he was not happy with that. There's only a few times where he's been, he actually was really aggravated with me. I was pretty beloved most of the time. I mean, now I'm completely cut off, but that's another story. We'll get to that.
Yeah. Well, let's go to, so it kind of gives your history. It gives everyone a background. Everyone that's listening, you're not listening to some random person that just kind of poked her head in the system a couple times, but you were interfacing with Mike on a regular basis with the leadership team. You knew him very well. You helped make big decisions regarding the money. You even pushed him certain directions regarding the money. So that's the background. So now give us the first kind of like run-in with, what you would say is you had the money, then you had the sin issue. So talk to us about when this kind of all blew up and what led us to here.
Okay. Yeah. Well, throughout my time, I would catch wind of things that were going on, but it was always very, it seemed almost purposely cloaked from me. And I thought it was a joke that I'm a personality that I kind of assume people really like me. It takes a lot for me to think you don't like me. And so
That's awesome.
That's good.
and so
Good confidence right there.
and so I just assumed it was like a sweet endearment, but my fellow leaders would say things to me like, "Oh yeah, Lizzie, we make sure that you don't find out about stuff because you'll be Lizzie about it. You'll be a redhead about it. You'll be Irish, whatever." But I realized that it was intentional that things would be kept from me because I would do something about it. The way that I was raised my dad was a pastor, and I came with a really solid theology and internal compass. And so if I had known this stuff about Mike, I want to believe that I would not have turned a blind eye because I didn't when I found out.
Yeah.
Truly, there were things, these things were cloaked. But I would hear, on so-and-so's team, everybody knows that guy does drugs or that. And I would just be like, I would try and rattle the cage. Like, aren't we going to do something about that? And Mike and others would always just kind of like damp, and give some sort of answer. They aren't leaders. They're just singers and musicians. Hey, if you get in the prayer room, you're going to find your heart transformed. We just need everybody, don't quit, you win, all of this. But meanwhile, there's really egregious sin happening that actually destroys people's lives, right? And so this current situation for us started in the summer of 2021. And do we want to go there? Kind of the
Well,
door?
I kind of, we were kind of refreshing on your AG video, and even just kind of as free as you feel to talk about this, but like the scenario with Mike's son and how you guys stepped in on that kind of, because that really gives me a background for prior to all the Jane Doe situation, you really coming in and swinging the bat hard at this thing and not seeing any movement. And I like the way that you say the word cloak, that is, some people say Matthew 18, you say cloak. I see that dynamic as real. So talk to us about what you experienced while you just tried to bring that forward. And then that way people can understand what they're seeing happen here right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Blaise, I heard you say in one of your other shows, you were talking about yourself and you said, I don't ever want to see myself as a victim of abuse. Maybe it with Julie. I think it was when you were talking with Julie Roy's.
Could have been.
And I really identified with that because even when I tell you guys this story and you hear some of these things, even throughout that, I absolutely would not have said I was a victim of spiritual abuse. But I can look at my story from the outside and be horrified at the treatment that happened to me and my husband and the others. And if I can look outside of it, I can say, oh my gosh, that is such extreme spiritual abuse. But there's something very vulnerable about saying vulnerable and almost prideful, like I was spiritually abused. I just don't like it. But I know that it's real. But I'm saying that because I want people to know that I identify with that feeling of like, most people are not, this gross victim mentality thing that's just, that leaders are sliming other people with. I'm like, if you actually got it, very few people want to say I was a victim
You're exactly
of
right.
anything.
You're exactly right.
It's a gross feeling. It's a gross feeling. And so I just wanted to put that in there. But so here I am, a little bit about my background and how I was part of the inner circle, right? Now there's an inner circle that no one's ever a part of. It's kind of this elusive thing that doesn't really exist, but everybody wants to be part of it. but it's not really there. And so, but I was friends with the leadership team, were my friends, right? We're at each other's weddings and babies and baby showers and moms groups. And this is my world. Christmas parties, I had this thing. I love to throw extravagant Christmas parties for us just to enjoy each other. So these are my people, right? And I perceive myself as their people. Again, I believe that I'm beloved, right? So I believe that when I bring a protest, I'm going to be heard, and it's going to make a difference. So we find out from my friend, I notice something's wrong. I just have this spidey sense. Something is wrong. Something is wrong. Then our friend Mark, we find out that he has been removed from his house. We're shocked. This is not the guy that I know. We all know him to be incredibly godly and gentle, and very gentle, actually. And we just know something is wrong. My husband and I have him over for dinner. He looks like a shell of the person I've ever known. And we start to ask him questions about what's going on. And he's answering our questions, and just nothing is making sense. And finally, we do what I think any pastorally minded, leadership minded people would do. And I said, brother, it sounds to me like what you're telling me, it sounds like your wife is having an affair. Have you considered that? Is your wife having an affair? And he breaks down and he says, yes. And it's been going on for a couple of years. Jeez. And me and Peter, we do again what any normal person does in the church. And we say, okay, how can we help? Who is helping you? Who's helping you? Who's involved? Let's get involved, right? We're looking at him. He's a shell. I can't even describe the trauma. I said, who is it with? And he opens his mouth and he says who it is. And he says the name, and he is practically in the fetal position immediately, crying to us, saying, I shouldn't have said it. I promised I wouldn't say it. Don't tell anybody. I shouldn't. We're watching this just nightmare unfold in front of us. We can't even take it in. Wow. And of course, the first thought is, he can't know. Mike doesn't know. Mike will help. Wow. And this unraveled this nightmare where we found out Mike would not help, and he opposed us at every turn. He refused to meet with us. This man's life was being destroyed. He'd had a false charges of abuse that she brought against him. She fabricated. Can you imagine being taken out of your house? Jeez. He's never been back. Everything, his journals, everything personal. And she did this to him twice. We ended up, about a year after this, actually having to testify in a public trial. And he won. The judge found absolutely no evidence. Wow. That of any of the things that he had been charged with. And it just was, the mess was messy upon messy about what she had, it wasn't physical abuse she wasn't charging him with. And so it was just, I won't get into it too much, but it was horrific. That she used this random thing to claim he was stalking her, and it just was bad. Yeah. And so sorry.
And I just, not to interrupt you, but I just want to make sure for the audience, because that was so intense what you just shared. And honestly, it was just so honest and vulnerable. I really appreciate it. Did you say who it was, or did you say for the audience that it was Luke Bickle?
It was Luke Bickle.
Yeah. And I know that's already out in the Royce report, and that's been made public. But just so that everybody can understand, a man had been going through this for over 2 years. A woman was having an affair with Luke Bickle. So Mark's wife was having an affair with Luke Bickle, Mike's son. And when you guys as friends brought him in and are trying to help him, and you say, "Hey, it sounds like your wife is having an affair," and he admits that, and then you ask who, he says the name and breaks down immediately, in probably wrapped up in fear, shame, also panic and release. The fact that he finally said it, because he'd probably been wanting to say it. But this is the idea of the cloak, the hidden, and obviously we can look at nepotism here and all that stuff involved. But overall, where does this come from? Why, like, as you started to dig in, I guess tell us now your journey going. Now, where did you talk to Mike? Did you talk to Stuart? What happened from here?
Yeah, we immediately, he also shared with our next door neighbor who was also a leader. So we ended up with this little band, okay, of people, and we formulated a plan. We're grieving. We're realizing Mark is it. We dubbed it Operation Keep Mark Alive. That's how dire it was.
Yeah.
We were, and I think he would be fine with me sharing this. It was, multiple times a day. Who's talking to Mark? Where is Mark? Does everybody, let Mark get coming for dinner? Okay, what do you need? Like everybody, because his life it was a horror. And he's losing his children, who he had a phenomenal relationship with, nothing wrong. And he's coming off of 2 years of having cared for them, being their primary caregiver because his wife was gone, having an affair. And so we go first to the main leaders at the time. We divide and conquer. And one of us, John Chisholm, he shared this, he goes to Mike. And we go to the other main leaders at the time were Stuart and Dave Sliker and Isaac. And that's when we received the response back. The initial response back was, "We don't need to meet with you guys. Have you done Matthew 18 with everybody involved?" And we couldn't believe it. And so that kind of response continued to play out over months of us begging for help. And Stuart is the only one who agreed to meet with us. It took him a while. The others would not meet with us, said, "Don't need to meet with you." Dave, when we finally did meet with him months later, it was February. So this is summer of 2021. Dave finally met with us February of 2022 and still said, "I don't want to know anything. I don't want to know any details because I want to have a godly response and not have any information." And we said to him, how is it okay that you are claiming that you're one of the primary leaders here and you don't want to know this? And you think it's okay with you that we are carrying this weight and you don't even know the details of it. But we honored it. We're like, we're not going to force you to listen, but just to give you a taste of this. So when it started to come out, we were terrified to talk to the wrong person. We were under the Matthew 18 quote. There's the cardinal sin at IHOP is talking. Cardinal sin. And so we were all operating in just this. Every minute was fear of, we're going to say the wrong thing. We're going to say it to the wrong person, but we have to get help. But this is wrong, And so in the first 2 months after our initial, contact with the leadership team, Matthew 18, godly speech, gossip, every single sermon.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you got to say this, kid. So this confrontation happens. These conversations start happening. Then the next thing that happened was, from the stage, sermons on Matthew 18 and gossip.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
All right. And the videos, have you seen the videos that somebody posted? Okay, so
Yeah.
that was a staff meeting in October, and that was about us.
Wow.
We got a phone call that it was happening. We tuned in and saw it. You got to remember, I'm not the me right now watching it. I'm the me who thinks I'm still part of the family.
Yeah.
And I am literally watching Mike mock me and the couple other people that were involved in this and do the role play, the thing that he was. I mean, it was just, I cried till I couldn't breathe. It was just awful.
Wow.
Yeah.
So whenever you're watching that, whenever you're watching this staff meeting and you're still, part of the family, are you inside, are you like, this is wrong, they're wrong? Or are you kind of questioning yourself like, am I a gossiper? Am I doing the wrong thing? Am I not?
The shame and the torment, that's the word for it. It's a torment to like know you have to do the right thing. You read the scripture, right? And I was saying from the beginning, so I would say things boldly out of my mouth, right? But that doesn't mean that inside you're not like, oh my gosh, what if I am a gossip? And we're getting emails from Mike where he's saying that to us, refusing to meet with us. I've been working with Mike for 20 plus years. I could get a meeting with Mike in 5 minutes for all of those years. My office, there's like 5 or 6 offices back there, the strategy room and the boardroom. One of them was mine. Like for him to refuse to meet with me and then come back, these emails from him were like, I hear you've been talking. I hear you've been talking to multiple people, questioning my leadership. I'm not going to meet with you and give you a chance to twist my words. I mean, it's like horrifying. So when I'm hearing it, my insides are tormented, but I was saying boldly to my brothers, primarily. There's one sister, that was part of leadership. We are in step 3 of Matthew 18. We are step 3. Mark has gone one-on-one. I mean, Mark's story of 2 years of begging for help, and having Mike not help and having it be covered by the few leaders that did know. It's a horror. He went one-on-one, then he took a brother, and now we are the church. But it didn't, so that it's this runaround. So the way that Matthew 18 is practiced here is that it's a press restart. So every single person so maybe Elizabeth did it, but you got this husband, Peter, did he do it? Oh, well, he's going to have to go to every single one it's just, so the point is an endless runaround. And then Stuart would say, like, we don't know how long it's going to take someone to repent. The repentance process is long. And so we're going to move into step 3 when
My
we
God.
don't.
Wow.
So you just feel like you're taking crazy pills nonstop.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, to use their narrative of King David, it's like, well, actually David was confronted by Nathan and repented on the spot. So let's just, but it's kind of wild because we're watching now. Elizabeth, do you think, and this is maybe, I have intimate knowledge of Stuart as far as working with Stuart for a few years behind the scenes and how he works with Matthew 18, because I got pulled into a Matthew 18 process with Stuart and then hijacked in a hijack meeting with Sliker suddenly. I didn't know Matthew 18 was happening, but I walk in and there's Sliker, and I'm like, what's happening? Okay, I thought I was just, whatever. So I guess what I'm asking you here is, being that you worked with those guys even longer, do you think this is what they really believe? Do these guys, are they just they've been taught this by Mike so many times, they just believe that this is true? This is how the body of Christ should work?
I do believe that. And because I mean, my synopsis of some of the more shocking meetings that we've had, even about the Brad Tebbitt thing, I walked out and I would say, all I know to say is that my brother, because they are my brothers, is just as convinced that his position is right And he said the wackiest stuff, right? Whether I'm talking about, Stewart or Dave Slyker, like just, and he's so convinced. He's genuine. This is genuine,
Yeah.
right? And so, yeah, I think that, and I mean, it's a great thing to bring up, Blaise, just how saturated all of us were in this thinking. To break out of the thinking and of the paradigm is really, it's difficult and unusual because the trust is so high. So if you have somebody, Mike, he's your hero, right? He is knows more about the Bible than anybody. You watch a lot of what seem like the fruits of the Spirit in his life. He's in the prayer room all the time. Why would you not trust him when
Yeah.
he says this is how it works? Right? So you've got this wound of trust in so many people because he said it's how it works. And so you lived your life by that, but it's not how it works. And it didn't work, And so, I mean, I know in your situation, Blaise, bizarrely, I was on, the leadership side of that. I told you, I found this email from Mike about you and his perspective. And everything, there's this great minimization of any narrative or viewpoint that is not like ours, but the drenching in the perspective is so thorough. So anyways, that's a long way to say, yeah,
Yeah.
I think they absolutely believe it.
Well, for context, real quick, just so that, because even people that I don't tell my story all the time in our stuff, so even people that follow us don't even always know. But for context, I was there from 08 to 2012. Got in 12 immersed kind of in I'd say more of like a Joseph Prince grace type of thing that kind of bled also into Bethel eschatology, which would be, Kingdom Now, and Todd White, and then started to mix into John Crowder, which was a little more wacky charismatic with the Joseph Prince grace and kind of in that whole vein. And because I had already left IHOP already, but I had been influential in the night watch. So I'd already left and was doing my own ministry, but I lived across the street and I posted on Facebook I wasn't even a part of IHOP when these confrontations happened. I was actually underneath another ministry. I had been ordained by a church down the street. And anyway, so long story short, I start getting emails to come in. Stuart said, hey, and me and two other friends, hey, y'all need to come meet with us. So I convinced my friends to go because of the whole honor culture. I'm like, well, Stuart's asking, we need to go. But I'm like, I don't even go there anymore, but we need to go. So we go, we do all this long meeting. Then, a few months later, hey guys, it's that time again. I need to meet with y'all again. And they're like, why is he wanting to meet with us? I'm like, well, we just need to go. We need to go. So apparently what had been happening in the night watch is people were bringing up these theological conundrums to Stuart and to the night watch leadership team and having meetings with them and struggling with this. And my book was getting around and they were being told, don't read that book. Don't follow him on Facebook. Don't listen to him, and this, that, and the other. And so it kind of came to a head when I showed up at the second meeting and Slyker was there and they kept us in a late night meeting from, probably 7 p.m., 6 p.m. to midnight or 1 a.m., something like that. Long meeting. Elizabeth, I literally had a former leader of mine from another ministry reach out when I told my story finally a few years later. And he said, well, you weren't chained to the chair. Why did you stay there the whole time? And it was interesting because as like you said earlier, nobody wants to pretend like they're a victim of anything. And so I was like, well, yeah, I guess you're right, and I tell Christina, I guess he's right, I guess I could have just gotten up. But it's crazy when you start having theological, prophetic things about honor culture or, submission to an authority and these ideas that if you buck an authority, you're bucking God. And so even though I had disagreements with theology, even though I wasn't under their leadership, I still had this deep sense of loyalty to a theology and these people because of the prophetic history and all this stuff. And so I sat there in it and you're kind of frozen. You're just frozen for 6 hours arguing and then trying to appease and then afterward you just feel like, I'm not going to cuss on our podcast, but that's what you feel like afterward. And then you're just like, finally I left town. I'm like, I'm out of here. This place sucks. I'm leaving. And, but so tell, if you could, from that perspective, not to sidetrack, but I think it pictures how they deal with these things. what was the emails you were getting? What was the conversation behind the closed doors? In my mind, I thought this is just a Stewart thing, but like it was clearly going bigger. So what was that? What was going on there?
Well, yeah, you wrote the blog that got a lot of attention.
2 years later, I wrote a
And the
blog
one,
and went viral about my experience with Stewart. Yeah.
yeah. And so, um, so I actually had, because I dealt with all of our major donors, I actually had some donors that were concerned. And so I kind of, said, hey, does somebody want to write a response? Do we want to say, because of course, remember that I'm fully, entrenched in
Totally.
you got a wrong spirit, Blaise.
Of course.
I mean, that's all it would take is for Mike to just say that to me. I don't know if he said those exact words, and I would 100% be on his page and go, oh yeah, gosh, because part of what Mike did is he built up he portrayed so many things that appear to be fruits of the spirit that you really buy in to he's a truly astounding guy.
Yeah.
So you can't imagine that there's these dark things, right? And so, and I've had to do a lot of unraveling of my idolatry of Mike, and repentance.
Yeah.
That's on me. That's on me. And I gave him a place that he did not, that no man deserves, right? But anyways, so I say, is somebody going to respond to this guy? What should I tell our donors? So I'll just read you a couple of lines. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah,
I want
let's do it.
to. I want to hear.
I'm gonna cry. Not really.
That's not too bad, but it's just to give you a perspective, right?
No, I want the
Basically
perspective. Yeah.
he basically says, yeah, if somebody has energy to write, if you have energy to do that, then he bolds, know that he will blast back and get 5 more people to do the same. People who write blogs get really defensive when someone suggests that what they wrote is not accurate. They have a lot more time than we do. It's their only fish to fry to make themselves look good. So here's the grandiose, we have so much more to do. Plus, they have a core of offended people who have energy to write because they also do not have other fish to fry. Happy people do not have nearly the same energy to write to defend us. So, I mean, that is I would say that is an encapsulation of how things were dealt with.
Yeah.
We are happy people doing good, important, righteous things. We don't have time.
Happy, shiny people. Oh my gosh. Well, it's so crazy because even hearing that response, I actually, my initial reaction is actually like, yeah, actually that makes a lot of sense. That like from a leadership perspective, from a protection perspective, I'd be like, yeah, don't waste your time with that guy. He's going to blast back. And most people, and it's the truth. Most people, it's way easier to write a Yelp review that's negative than a Yelp review that's positive.
Right.
After I eat somewhere, I'm going to go be like, 5 stars, this was amazing. But if it's terrible, I'll be like, hey, this sucked, stay away. Yeah. But nevertheless, the truth of what happened, I mean, what was crazy is it was 2.5 years later when I wasn't married to Christina when all this happened. And I got married, we met and got married after about 2 years after, or about 1.5 years after all that happened at IHOP. And so I'd tell her these stories and she was like, what were you in? Like, what happened? What did they do to you? And I was like, I think I want to tell my story. She's like, well, you should tell your story. I'm like, yeah, I think I want to tell it. She's like, well, you should tell it, And finally, after like 2 years, I told it. And I remember writing this blog and I was shaking the whole time I was writing it. I was shaking. And looking back, because I went through a time of like, basically reconciling with Stewart and Dave in 2019 and thinking, oh, I must have just been bitter and offended, and now looking back, I'm like, actually, I was traumatized. I was literally traumatized telling my story. And I had this spiritual abuse thing. And I was just telling my story. When you tell your story about something like that, it's unearthing this pain and this trauma and this confusion and now I look back at this whole thing and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was like a decade ago. Wow. Like I thought that when I wrote that blog, in hindsight, I was like, I was probably wrong to write that blog. Now I'm like, I don't really know, but all I know is that place was a mess. And the guy at the top that was rebuking me, because I did actually hear Mike during that time talk about hyper grace from stage. I would hear these messages come out refuting hyper grace. And I was thinking, well, I was not out there preaching that everybody can sin. That was never the preaching that I was doing.
Right.
I was never preaching that.
Right.
But what's wild is to hear back those sermons from Mike. I'm going, you were literally living a double life at the time. And I was over here not even in ministry anymore. Had quit ministry, was just living, like working with my hands and trying to take care of my family and trying to like just love Jesus. And you're literally out there fashion hyper. It's just crazy. Anyway, it's just crazy to see how those things are dealt with. So I don't want to hang on that for so long, but like, let's fast forward now to, these are the types of things that in the ELT meetings in 2013, 2015, you see how they deal with this stuff with your friend Mark, which I just want to say, for Mark, I just honor this guy for just having the courage to open his mouth to you guys that night. That right there, unearthing that pain, that was courageous for him. Walking through it continually, that was courageous. Walking through that court situation, that was courageous. Actually being out there right now, I've seen some of the stuff he's written, that's courageous. And so major props to Mark for walking through that. And I know it's not over as far as what we're all walking through with that, but I'd like to hear now from you. So when you saw the way that was handled with Mike Bickle's son, at the time, what was the tip-off? Because I heard in the AG video, one of you said, I can't remember if it was you or if it was Jennifer or if maybe it was one of the guys, but what was the tip-off when you went, wait, there was a long-standing, some sort of connection, and you said this in the AG video, that was prior to, the connection with Luke Bickle. So talk as much as you feel free to talk about that.
Yeah. So there had been an observable connection, relationship of some sort between Mike and Mark's wife for a very long time, like probably 6 years. And she, this sounds so bizarre when I say it now, and we all watched it happen. She fed Mike every day. She brought him food because, what she told me was that she'd had a dream that he was going to live till he was 120, but only if she took care of him and fed him like really perfect food. And she oils, and she's really, she's very, very knowledgeable about health and supplements. And so she had a whole protocol. And that was the beginning of the erosion of their marriage. And Mark would say that because it got so extreme, so much time focused on Mike, so much time serving Mike. And when I say every day, I think people are imagining like a couple times a week. No. Every day, hours a day.
This was verifiable from lots of other people.
Yeah. And we would watch that she brought the food. A lot of times it was breakfast, or like early in the morning. Sometimes it was lunch. Sometimes it was smoothies and kale salad, or it's just this beautiful food. So that bunch of her day. So people were uncomfortable with it, but like I said in the Advocate video, we really put it on her, right? Because Mike was like this kind of like, well, he does everything right, probably, in our heads. And so instead of asking hard questions, which were not okay to ask, it's not like I think we all knew we wouldn't get anywhere with them. Instead, I, potentially unfairly put it on her that she was, foisting herself, and it was because she was, obsessed with Mike or something. Now I think there probably was some of that, but can you imagine that? This so for 6 years, Christina cooks for another man instead of caring for your children in that time period, and on your dime, you're paying for it, Blaise. You're paying for it. Wow. And delivers it faithfully. They didn't take family vacations unless Mike was out of town.
That's crazy.
So yeah, and there were multiple other leaders that did try and say something. So I do want to say that I can name 3 women, all women, I'm telling you about at the end of this, the end of this, the title is going to be The Women Who Took Down Mike Bickle. And there are names that I can't name, but it's pretty much women across the board who have been courageous enough, who were alert enough to go, something's wrong, and who were courageous. Yeah, I already said courageous, but like that, there's a really cool group of women, and so you guys know a couple of us that are on the AG, but there's a bunch that nobody knows about that are like just incredible.
Yeah.
And so they got their crowns in heaven. But so there were some confrontations about it, but he would always just kind of like, it's her thing, I don't know, it's her thing.
So
She
people
wants to do
actually
it.
went to Mike Bickle and said, hey, this is kind of weird.
This is weird. Why are you guys hours and like the door is closed and locked to your office and you guys are in there?
Yeah, that's so weird.
Wait, what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they confronted Mike on the door is closed and locked
And
in
I
your
have to ask you
office.
something.
Okay.
So when this happened, the women confronted Mike Bickle about this. But so did Stuart know this was happening? Did Isaac know this was happening? Did Dave? They all knew this was happening. They knew he was in the room with somebody that wasn't his wife with the door locked every day for hours. They knew this was happening, and everybody was just cool with it.
Everybody did. That's what I'm telling you. I can't even describe the power of the like. Let's see, I knew about this nightmare with Mark, and now as his story unfolds, hundreds of hours of talking, and I'm starting to, now I understand that Mike and his wife, oh my gosh, have emailed, delete scores of emails and texts between them. He's never allowed to read them. For years, all sorts of information like this. And you guys, this is how strong. And I hope that people hear this so that you don't feel crazy how long it's taking you, the listener, to wake up and be able to believe something negative. So I'm drenched and I have information about wickedness and evil that is more than almost anybody has here in South Kansas City. And I was still saying about out of my mouth, at least there's no way. We know that Mike would not, be physically involved with it. At least we know that.
Right.
That's how
Wow.
the moral, kind of the vision of him as a moral guy. We thought he was like, wow, he's so dumb that he doesn't know what this looks like. And
do you think that is what, I'm just so curious about these leaders. Like, do you think that's what Isaac and Stuart and Dave thought too? They were just like, oh, he doesn't know that that's not a good look, and it's just Mike.
Totally.
Everybody thought
Totally.
that.
I don't think, yeah, I do want to say that about my brothers. I don't think until things started to get brought to them, and now we know about a really horrific thing that was brought to them, aside from what I'm talking about, until this kind of stuff started coming to people, no, I don't think anybody imagined that Mike was involved in anything like this. So the betrayal of everybody is so profound, but I'm going to tell you my personal opinion is that Mike is everyone's confessor. Is that the right way to say it? So even you want to confess to Mike. It was a joke around.
Yeah.
Like, if you reach a sin in your life, there's nowhere you'd rather be than in Mike Bickle's office. You're going to feel like $1 million afterwards, right? So people would confess their sin to him. It is my opinion. I just need to say that really clearly. It is my opinion that those confessions are used against people.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes complete sense. And I think, go ahead, babe.
Well, I just want to know if you've heard this before. We've heard people tell us too that people have before confessed some like deep sins to Mike, and in return he has promoted them to be leaders.
Yes.
Is that something you've seen or heard before too?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And really questionable things. I mean, some of the women that are in questionable relationships with him right now, or were, I don't know what's going on right now, as in this minute, but yeah, should have been we're divorcing husbands and in very compromising situations, yet are drawn close, sometimes elevated on the stage, given responsibility. That's just one example in a normal and multiple leaders protesting about in multiple the case of I can think of 3 of these women protesting and saying, hey, like this woman is going through a divorce. Things are, traumatic. Whoever's right, wrong, or whatever, like they shouldn't be in leadership. They shouldn't be put in leadership right now. There should be some sort of season of a break, some restoration, but nope. Time after time, Mike would make sure that person just was, kind of like sailed through.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I
I know
think
it's a lot to take in.
no, it definitely is a lot to take in, and I think that again, just to kind of put perspective here because a lot of people like just tell me the proof, tell me the details, and then I'll be happy because I'll know. When I say people, I'm even talking about people that just kind of peruse through the info randomly. I'm not even talking about the people that have been following this faithfully and trying to dig through it for months. But I want people that are coming across this video to go, okay, 2 things, two kind of like visions here that I'm saying. Number one is give people perspective of the last 20 years and how things are dealt with, and kind of the conspiracy of silence and the what do you call it? The theology of silence, actually. The theology
Yes.
of silence, that you feel more godly when you are silent. That's why Mark, it took him the moment of breaking to finally open his mouth. And even in that, he felt like he had sinned when he had not sinned. He had sinned against his own conscience that had been built up by a false theology. And that's where I think the movement carries that. You see it in that staff meeting, that long staff meeting. You see what they teach and preach. You see it in the preparation of everybody for the Jane Doe allegations to come public in October, the preaching of the black horse, this preparation of there will be accusation, but the way that we treat people when we're accused is lovingly. And you watch that all happen on Twitter. I watched it with Tracy Bickle, the way she treated people on Twitter, and the niceness thing, the bless you, all this stuff. And instead of seeing the truth of it and going, yeah, you're right, we do need to out this minister in the same way Paul outed sexually immoral brethren that were unrepentant. It needed to be outed. It needed to be out there and accepted as the truth, not just like so I guess what I'm saying is that people need to see that context. Then secondly, I want people to see that this is something that is duplicated in churches all across the United States. Be it in spiritual abuse situations or, SA situations, these things are duplicated. And my hope, Elizabeth, is that you telling this story, people, number one, leaders, it would be an amazing miracle if narcissistic leaders across the United States would look and go, oh my gosh, I'm running our organization like this. I'm going to stop. But unfortunately, that probably won't happen. So the elders or the leaders that are within those groups go, oh my gosh, we need to confront this. We need to change this. We need to bring reformation. So I just so appreciate you sharing all this. I kind of, and you can tell me where you want to go from here, but I kind of would like to move that next level and go, okay, let's talk about when the Jane Doe dropped her story and it came to you guys, and then that next process. So
yeah, and just to wrap up this other one first, because did you though resign? You resigned before the Jane Doe stuff, right? And so, and it was because of this, right? I kind of want to hear about your departure and how you were treated and that story.
Yeah. So I actually resigned in 2015 because I had my 4th baby, but I was still an advisor, right? And I said to the team, like, hey, I'm gonna have a baby and start my own agency, so I'm more in charge of my time, but I'll still help. So, it's kind of like once a IHOP leader, always an IHOP leader, in a funny way, and also not. It's not, and you're kind of always in but always out. Like I had a master key until I proactively turned it in and gave it to another leader about a year into this nightmare. I'm like, why do I have this? Like, so I could be in any office, I could come and go. Mike said, please come in, do whatever you want. So I was in that zone from 2015 and it still was helping with fundraising through 2017. And this all started in 2021. And so we were members of the church, very active, hugely part of the community. So the church is what we left. So we finally had to, after pressing meetings with the pastoral, our pastor was Isaac. And we finally, couldn't stay in good conscience anymore, because our contention was that it was being dealt with unbiblically. We had people that were in a raging affair. Their leaders were giving us words like, we need to, operate in the long arc of mercy and just wait for mercy. Mike would say, things look different in 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 years. We just have to just wait. Meanwhile, other people's lives, I would say, mercy for who? It's not mercy for the children of these families. It's not mercy for Mark. It's not mercy for Ricky, Luke's wife. Her life is a literal crime scene. I shouldn't say literal. Her life is a crime. You know what I'm saying? Like what has happened to them, the level of abuse that happened to Mark and Ricky is unfathomable. And the fact that both of them are still standing and loving the Lord and not embittered is like, there is a God.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I'm like, yep, Jesus is real, because I don't know how you do that.
You just dropped a huge point that I want you to sit on for just a second, and then you keep telling the story. But the mercy idea, this long arc of mercy, you got to realize now for all of us listeners, we're going, okay, maybe you were there for a long time as a leader or as a intern or staff member or whatever, and you always would hear these things and be like, wow, my good friend Austin sat in with Mike one time in a meeting because he was part of those kind of Matthew 18 confrontations with me back in those old days. And he sat with Mike years later when things had kind of calmed down. And he told me that when he sat with Mike kept saying to him, no, we're all about mercy here. We're all about, it's fine. It's all about mercy. It's all about, well, now in hindsight, we understand why he makes such a big deal about that, because he's got years, decades worth of hidden sin of immorality and abuse that he perpetrated and lives with, and he just pushes delete for himself. I don't know if he has a pope that he goes to confess his little thing and they just go, you're clean. You know what I mean? But it wouldn't surprise me if it was if it was one of these guys that stands up for him online right now. It would not surprise me at all if he just went, hey, Rick, Joyner, Restoration Rick Joyner is what I like to call him. Restoration Rick. Hey, Restoration Rick. I did it again. Well, that's okay, Mike. We're all about mercy here. Get back in there. You're the best teacher to ever live. You're the most prophetic man ever. Get back in the game. I mean, that's and obviously I'm making this up, so I don't want to. Allegedly, this is a fake conversation. Sure. I don't want Rick to come after me. But anyway, the whole idea is that all this mercy is for the perpetrators and the evildoers. Right. The mercy is never for those victimized, the abused, those that have had their lives destroyed. So the definition of mercy, Mike Broomback and everybody on Twitter, the whole Bickle bot team, the definition of mercy, we've got to have mercy for the right people here. And I think that's just a great point that you made, and I just had to go on a little rant.
And mercy is, or have the right definition of it. Mercy is severe. Sometimes mercy is severe. And so it is merciful to deal justly and swiftly and strongly. It would have been merciful for the body of Christ here in Kansas City to put Luke Bickle out of the church.
That's a great point.
It would have been merciful to him, right? And many others, not just, one thing that was said to me, Dave Slyker said, Elizabeth, I just think if his last name wasn't Bickle, you'd be, treating us really differently. You need to act like it's just anybody else who's having an affair. And, I don't know, the ludicrous nature of that statement stands alone, but it would have been mercy to deal swiftly. And instead we have this slow hemorrhage bleed out of all these lives And we appealed. I mean, I know we appealed to Lenny to do something, to Isaac to do something, to Dave to do something, to Stuart to do something, to Mike to do something, to Marcy to do something. I mean, we left no stone unturned. And everybody was under Mike's power. And he said, leave it to me. Like Dean shared in that video, leave it to me. And everybody obeyed. So, yeah, I think, the suppressing, I had a couple of notes here that, I think what people experience is that we're taught to suppress our instinct for so many years, you probably experienced that, Blaise, to bypass our intuition and our conscience, to accept the narrative that's coming from the leader. And it feels really enlightened, right? It feels like, oh, like Long Arc of Mercy. It's a great example.
It's an incredible statement, actually. You could write
Isn't it?
book on that, and it would seem like it would, wow, that's a t-shirt. I mean, it's just so
beautiful, right?
And dangerous too. And dangerous.
It's so dangerous. And I think we got numb. So our reactions got numb. One of the things that Stuart said to me as we, I was honest with him, very honest. As you can tell my personality, I don't have meetings that are just like, I don't speak my mind. And he said, Elizabeth, one of the marks of a good leader is that they de-escalate situations. And you tend to escalate situations. Now, this was in the height of Mark. His life is destroyed and people are having a raging affair, and it's being covered by this international leader. And we're going, hey, something needs to happen, right? And in that context, I'm told good leaders de-escalate. Elizabeth.
And just to add to the context, because just to remind everybody, in that context, plus that leader had been meeting with the woman that was having the affair behind closed doors for hours a day, privately and behind locked doors while she fed him food. And that was prior to all this. So same context. It's like the context of this situation is not just an affair. For 6 years, it's not just an affair with the son of the national leader, but it's also the woman that had the affair had also spent 6 years of time feeding that man everyday food to keep him alive till he's age 120, and did it behind closed doors with the doors locked. Why do the doors need to be locked? Why do they need to be closed? Why can't you just drop off food and toss some essential oil in the air and or whatever your voodoo is that you have to do to keep him alive till 120? Why not just do it with the door open? Why would Mike is not that dumb. Mike is very, very sly now in hindsight. It's like he was always promoting the Billy Graham rule, just like everybody else would. Why is the door locked from the inside with a deadbolt that only works from the inside? Where does this come from? Yeah, I'm going to just go ahead.
I know. So you could just keep going on that. Like, how did we not see it? Oh my gosh. And there was always the cover girls of where everything was super kosher, and he would, I can't ride in a car alone. I had one girl tell me this. So many victims have come to us of different stages of their experience, whether it was just grooming or went further, and and this one said, I would have to rearrange my whole life because he said he couldn't ride in a car alone with a woman, and I'm thinking, what? You were cars with women all the time, So it's almost like there's these strategically placed decoys
that
right?
he did, to show that he was integrous, to show that he was the perfect example. Wow.
Right, because we would all go, but okay, so that doesn't. No, he's good. Anyways, so I want to go to the Jane Doe thing, but I want to just affirm the people that are watching that are in that cognitive dissonance, that place of still, it's almost impossible to get your mind around that Mike is a bad guy. It is so traumatic on every level. And I just want to affirm, that it was programming for a long time, and it was not something that just happened, kind of accidentally. We were all groomed. We were all programmed to see something and to not see something else,
Obviously you saw these things with Luke and the affair, and then you guys put it together that he had spent 6 years behind closed doors being fed meals with the same woman that had done the affair, but still you weren't like, oh, you didn't, because Mike is pure, Mike is perfect, Mike is this, that, and the other. He just was doing something that looked kind of silly. Then when
Yeah.
Jane Doe dropped, was that the first time for you, and for you in particular, that you went, wait a second, like,
It kind of was and wasn't. Okay, so after we started also confronting simultaneously the Brad Tibbitt situation, right? And we start honing in on that as well, and had, these just, stunning interactions about that. Um, I I was just kind of mentally tormented because it didn't make sense, right? I just am like, this doesn't make sense. We've got raging adultery over here. We've got a child. When I would have these meetings, I would insist on using the, right word. I'm like, child, and everyone would just get super uncomfortable. I'm like, well, yeah, that's pretty awful, isn't it, to say it, use the right words. And so we've got this guy who has now at one point got put into over the IHOPU media school. I find out and go ballistic, start calling meetings, being Elizabeth. And that it was okay. I mean, I had me and my husband had a 3-hour meeting with Dave Slyker in which he defended it. His whole heart, you guys. His whole heart. I mean, he believed that he said, I don't find there's no biblical precedent to exclude him. And we're just going, this is so blind. How can you give him a position of trust?
Blind.
In that meeting, Dave said to us, he said, Elizabeth, IHOPU will never have a policy against hiring someone with sexual predation or offense in their background. Never.
Slyker said this?
Yeah, my husband was with me. We were like, kind of say it again. What? And the logic was, what about the poor 17-year-old the 18-year-old who slept with a 16-year-old who said she was 17, and then it was statutory rape, and now he's a sex offender for the rest of his life. So there was always these bizarre outlier reasons.
Goodness.
I mean, in this same meeting, Dave said, I was so shocked that I forget the passage. I think it was Titus 2, might have been 1 Timothy. I mean, this was the strength that he believed this.
Yeah.
And we're contending with him. And he said, hey, it seems to me in this passage that the Holy Spirit is more concerned about divisive people than about molestation.
Wow.
So do I think that Dave actually thinks that when you put it in context? No, I don't. But that is what he said, and that's the strength of this mindset.
I actually do think that he believes that. I hate to say that, but I actually do, because based on his actions, it seems that way, and it sounds so intense, but yeah, it seems that way. But yeah, keep going.
So I'm going, something doesn't make sense. How are my brothers okay with this? And I started to just kind of do this thing. I said, Elizabeth, the one crazy pill, for some reason, that's how I described it. Crazy pill. I said, I feel like I'm sucking on a crazy pill. If I take that out of my mouth, everything makes sense. And what it is, I mean, it sounds so bad to say, Mike's a bad guy. That's the one thread that makes it all make sense, that he would make sure that we covered Brad Tibbitt and keep him on staff, not do anything about the adultery, be okay with everybody's lives being blown up, dismiss us like we were nothing. He said, I said, we begged him to do Matthew 18 with us. And he said, I don't need to do Matthew 18 with you. I've released you to the Lord. I'm not going to talk bad about you. After 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. To this day, he has not faced us. To this day, almost 3 years in.
Wow.
So I just went,
Man's
something.
a coward. This man's a total coward.
Yeah.
He won't meet with two people. He will not meet with two people because he knows he'll get caught. He'll meet with one.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He's real good at selling. He can sell one person, but if he meets with two, anyway, keep going.
And they can corroborate each other's stories, because it's classic Mike to say, I never said that. Did not say that. Did not say, and you just feel crazy, right? So I take that, I described it as taking a crazy pill out of my mouth. And I went, I think maybe Mike is a bad guy. And I just started letting myself think it and feel it and put that lens on for everything we'd experienced over the last couple years. This was about a year ago. And it was like, oh, if I just stop excusing him, I think maybe something's really wrong. So that was my posture. I actually even wondered about Tammy. Mike had told me, Mike had told me about a book 10 years ago, and I remembered it because he had told me about his friend Tammy's sister wrote a book trying to make IHOP look bad, put all this stuff in it. And I knew that in it was a theme of the figure who is supposed to be Mike in the novel had seduced a young girl, and he was the youth leader. In the book, he's the youth leader and had seduced the young girl that is the sister of the author in the book, the way she has the characters. So I'd even started wondering about that.
Wow.
So fun fact is that Tammy Woods has always been, we've always thought that she was a Jane Doe. And so in the, when, the drama about the document, where there's that one spot where we say Jane Doe 1, 2, no names were used.
The 50-page document. Yeah.
Yes. Tammy is Jane Doe 1. So we've always thought. So when she came out, now I'm leapfrogging. We'll talk about it. She came out. It was miraculous.
Was it a surprise?
Yes.
Because even though you had always thought she was, you hadn't had a conversation with her.
I had not personally. Yeah, I knew that some people were having conversations. It did not appear that she wanted to do that. And so, that story is played over. There's a lot more Jane Does than anybody knows about, that we know about.
How many do you think, obviously they haven't even all came forward, but the ones that have came forward, just to give everybody like an idea, how many estimate can you say?
How about I say this? We have this massive spreadsheet. People that have come to us with stories, people that need to be interviewed by a third party. I'm talking, it's pages and pages and pages and pages. I would say that on there, if we put together known Jane Does that have self-identified, I am a Jane Doe, known stories that we know they're a Jane Doe, but they may not ever want to self-identify, but for reasons we do know that they are. Women that have come to us that are self-identifying with verified stories that they were in the grooming stages. And yeah, so if we put all of that together, and when I say this, I want you to know, I absolutely believe there's way more than this. We are getting, I'm not going to give you an exact number. I'm going to tell you we are getting close to 20.
Yeah. That's what I was going to guess.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Wow. And so so Jane Doe comes to me. We're friends, we're friends. And she had said a couple things to me over the years, cryptic things. Like, there's a lot hidden. She said things like that. There's a lot hidden. There's a lot under the rug. The Lord's going to deal with it someday. Someday the Lord's going to deal with it. I know he is. And she had, Jane Doe had even confronted things. I know Jane Doe confronted a Mike about the woman that we talked about who was feeding him.
She recognized the pattern and said, this woman is probably this. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And so she told me a little piece. She told me about Mike said that Diane's gonna die and that we're gonna be married. She told me that mid June, probably, or no, late June, early July. This all happened in a couple weeks. I thought I thought I was going to stop breathing, uh, and at that point, I don't know anything else because there's no room for that. There's no shelf that statement can go on where we can. It's like game over. There's no explaining that at all. And then she elaborated and would tell me how this would happen and other things around it. I mean, the level of brainwashing and predatory manipulation, I could not even wrap my mind around what I was hearing. And that's, I'm giving you that because she has said that publicly. There's so much that she has not said publicly of how he would twist her mind. Um,
Do you
I've
think
tried to subscribe to people and say, like, if you and the people who doubt, or people like Mike Brumback, Mike, I know you. Ooh, Mike Brumback, you come to Kansas City and you sit on my couch, Mike Brumback, and we're going to have a conversation. I know you and I've known you for a long time. And I want to say that. How dare you? How dare you treat her like you've treated her? I cried myself to sleep for days after what you like to think that this happened to someone's mind, and that a person in such power over her stole from her, and it doesn't matter what he does, he can never give her back what he took from her, and that's for every victim. It doesn't matter what, there's no justice that can ever give them back what he has taken from them. But to couple the spiritual manipulation with the physical, and then the guilt, oh, we need to repent together. It's a horror on every level. So when I started to like have to take that in, and about a week later, it was July 4th, Independence Day. She called and said, Elizabeth, can you come talk with me? I'm ready. I'm going to tell you. And because she had told a couple of people that were super close to her. She had called Alan. And so that's July 4th, this last summer, is when she told me about Paris. It's I wanted to throw up, and then it just all kept unfolding. And I've watched her. I said this in my video. I've heard her tell her story. So she is telling the truth. She is telling the truth. It is consistent, but not weirdly, perfect consistent. It's depending on who she's with, the trust level. She'll tell more of it, less of it. There was the one time I sat across from her, and a reporter wanted to use certain words to describe one of the situations that she had revealed. And she said to me, they want to use this word, but I can't because I don't remember. I blacked out, or I went to sleep, or something. I know I was in that hotel room, but I can't. I want to tell the truth. I don't remember. I can't use that word because I don't remember. That's a woman who's telling the truth. Do you know how easy it would be to just like embellish? And I mean, she has told the truth. She could be fabricating stuff and trying to get people to believe her. She has never once mentioned a lawsuit. Was never trying to get money, or I mean anything. She wanted it to stop for other women. And We know she knew there is a more current woman.
Yeah.
We know this. This is not, there's people who are trying to say, oh, well, this is all under the blood 26 years ago.
Yeah.
There's a reason that we wrote what we wrote. I know that page was leaked. It's not something we would have put out publicly. There's a reason we wrote what we wrote with what we know. And there's a reason that we wrote that 50-page document. We knew our brothers. We knew what we were heading into. I hope that everybody can remember, for us, this was year 2, right? For the crew. Dwayne a year in, Alan 4 years into us 3. You know what I mean?
This is
We
no longer
knew.
Matthew 18. This is Matthew chapter 118.
Yeah,
I've been around this road for
totally.
years now. Yeah.
We knew we'd been blockaded by Stuart. We'd been blockaded by Mike. We knew every single move. We didn't anticipate some of the really treacherous ones afterwards. We had gotten ourselves, we know what to expect up till the first, incursion. And so that's why that document had to be written. We had to think through every angle. We wanted it documented. We are not guessing. These are provable. We have witnesses. You know what I mean?
And just for
So
context for listeners, Elizabeth, like obviously we've got, the armchair investigators that are like in this thing night and day, like they were in night and day, prayer. Like they're in this thing like deep and they know what's going on, right? But then there's a lot of people that are just perusing the info. They come in on a big story, things like that. So for everybody's context, the 50-page document is a document that some former ELT members came together, advocates, and basically wrote a proof document, like a dissertation type of thing, to say these are the reasons why we think this is what we believe has gone on. Here's corroborating witnesses and evidence, etc. 50 pages worth. And it was a continual working document, and that got leaked is what you're referencing, right?
Yeah. The front page that had actually, in later versions, it was very changed. So somehow we still to this day don't know how that happened. It got leaked, and then the whole document. It really was a working document for us to. I mean, can you imagine? Put yourself in our situation. The influx of information, where suddenly the Lord was putting together a puzzle. The pieces are falling. We've got victims. Oh my gosh, that one. Oh my gosh, that one. We have to responsibly put it somewhere, and we have to put it all together. So it was for us to go, this is how solid. We aren't crazy. This is how solid this is. So it really was a working document. And, Dwayne has already addressed that he's greatly regrets trusting Stuart with it. That violation is
sad.
Profound.
It's so
what
sad.
happened there.
It's so sad. And I remember seeing the front page, and we just held that front page. I didn't share that thing because I was going, that's not supposed to be out there, but I'll hold on to this. And this is quite the damning piece of evidence in my mind of these people's names, that meaning the people that were the accusers, going, these are not low-level people. These are people that I would trust their word. And they're saying something so extreme about Mike. And they're saying what's in this 50-page document that follows is, if half of it was true, the man should have never been in ministry and should never touch a mic again. It's like, that's right. I remember that. That was November that I got that page.
Yeah, it's way early. It feels like a long time ago.
Yeah, and so it's when I heard that Stuart took it, or got it, not took it, but got it, and then that he also read portions of it to worship leaders and began to open that up. I was just going, what? And then I heard that third-party investigation was considered unbiblical from Stuart. Stuart saying that's unbiblical, but he considers what he's doing with this document biblical. Like, where are the biblical, anyway? And obviously, with Stuart, I have these feelings because of what I've seen over the years, and I'm just going, man, it's so sad. But I actually, just to call back to our conversation earlier where I asked you, do you think that these guys believe that what they're doing is right? And I actually think that they're so inundated with, initially it was the worship of Mike. Now I think their dreams have been shattered on that. But I think that the prophetic history and all those things, they still hold it in such a high regard that they're fighting for this idea, or they're fighting for this thing, and then they're fighting for being the most biblical out there. And like, it's honestly very sad to me at this point for some of these guys. But nevertheless, I think that they need to be called to the carpet continually, and because they kind of snuck off into history suddenly, and they put these players like Eric Voles and the general, they put these hirelings in front to do the work for them while they went and hid. And I still think that these guys need to come out and say, we are sorry for what we did. We have missed the mark, and our leader was a total abuser, and we kind of took bat for him using Matthew 18. And I just don't know if we'll ever see that. I don't know if we'll ever see that.
Yeah. I mean, I agree, Blaise. I think that we all have to go a deep place of introspection. All of us, especially that were raised. I mean, I did 20 plus years, even though I was an adult when I came, that's the majority of my life, right? For some, they were, like I said, in high school when I showed up, and this is literally all they've known. I don't know how all of us that were in leadership don't take a serious step back and go, the chances that I have toxic practices, thoughts, twisted things are so high. It's ridiculous for me to think that I don't, right? And I think every single one of the current leaders and former leaders, I know that all of the AG, I know that we desire to be transparent, and I know that we are open with a third party investigation for it to investigate us. It's the only way forward, is that everybody says yes, because it's not about us as leaders. It is about the people. It is about a house of God that has a bloodbath behind it of people that have been wounded, and reckoning with that. Someone has to reckon with it. And the tag that's always given is, well, 16,000 have come through. So many. That's a ridiculous thing to say in order to minimize these stories of pain. And I think that all of us as leaders, I honestly think we're like in some way disqualified right now for a minute. I think we should all take a minute and go, we better get somewhere healthy, learn some new leadership patterns, step back. I mean, I was asked to be part of church leadership after we left Forerunner. My answer was no. I don't trust myself right now. I don't trust myself. And I know that I'm bleeding out. I know that I'm every shade of mad, sad, angry, grieving. I'm not fit right now. And I think more of us should do that, honestly, and say, I'm not fit right now. I think there's a lot of us that if we were raised in it and saturated in it, I think we need to take a hard look at what we learned. And I owe people, I know that I owe people apologies, Blaise and Christina, and I wish that all of their names were, wish I could think of all of them, but I know my heart, and I know that I know I mistreated people. And I don't deserve an excuse for that, right? I don't. And I want to make those things right. And I guess if you're listening and I mistreated you when I was a leader at IHOP, I want to hear about it, and I want to make it right. Somebody came to me, and I'm so glad they did. One person came to me and said, "You did this. Did you know that this was my story when you took these actions?" And I was just horrified. I didn't even bother to find out. I just listened to the company line. And I know myself enough that I said to this person, I said, was I cruel? I was probably cruel. And I was, and we have to reckon with it. There's so many, I just want to give love to the all the advocates that are out there. I always think Mike didn't know what he was getting into when he recruited the best and the brightest. And he recruited people that were fervent and full of heart, willing to sacrifice, willing to give it all, right? And now that's what's happening. I mean, all the big fancy survivor advocate people we're working with say they've never seen anything like this, where this kind of community is pressing for accountability. And so we're so thankful, so thankful. And I want to see things made right. I know that there's so many pain stories out there that need to be validated. And a lot of the people who are advocating have their own story, or they're advocating for someone else, and it deserves to be heard. And I think something that a lot of people don't know is that one of the reasons we hadn't in the past landed a third party is that I don't think many people know this, that the advocate group, the AG, we refused to accept a solution that focused only on Mike. And we believe it to be broader than that. And so that's part of what has, and it was, very easy to castigate us for that without saying the background. Well, they've refused again. Oh, that.
Yeah.
But strongly believe that the whole organization has to be looked at. And all of these stories that people have are absolutely valid, and they need to be heard. And so if that's you, just hold on. I think there's going to be some cool stuff coming. I wish I could say more than that, but it's going to be cool. And I think there's going to be a really neat way for everyone to be involved and have ownership in making a third party investigation happen. I think we're all going to be a part of it. Is that too cryptic? Can you guess what it is? I mean, we're going to have to crowdfund it. The AG, if we're going to have to crowdfund it, but we've made a lot of, I think that's actually super exciting. The thought of everybody who has passion about this. You can give $5, you can give $50, and we all have ownership in it, right? In bringing this thing in for a landing. I just think it's actually kind of beautiful. It was intimidating at first to think like, holy cow, well, we have a third-party investigator, but who's going to pay for it? Uh-oh, we're just little people.
Yeah.
But that's how we're going to do it. So we'll be talking about that coming up. I want people to feel encouraged. There has been a lot going on behind the scenes, and I want people to get that wind in their sails. It's not over. It's going to be good.
So does that mean that, and you may not be able to answer this, but does that mean that y'all did not come to an agreement with the ELT moving forward with one, but instead are going to head up your own, crowdfund it, and they don't have really a say?
Yeah, there's not really a final answer on that. We definitely hope that there would be, we definitely hope for some collaboration and
cooperation.
And I think
they'll have to cooperate.
Yeah.
Because I think people have
and
an idea that there would ever be a third party investigation at this point, but you're saying that we can still
there will be
hearing about it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there will be. And so I think how, all the details of it and who is involved in it, but I do know that the heart of the current leadership is to find a way forward, and make righteous decisions after a lot of really bad ones.
Right. Okay. And what you're saying too is sticking out to me, because you're saying, they're your brothers and they are really believe this, and this is why they're acting this way, and they really want a righteous way forward. You're saying that about the current leadership, which is hard.
So yeah, not everyone is there. Remember that
the people that are still there. And for me, that's encouraging to hear, but it's also like hard to believe. Specifically, the only person I can see that's still there from outside is Isaac, and it's been so disappointing. It's been so disappointing to watch everything that's happened from the beginning up until this point, and all of these terrible things, like we said, Eric Foles, and then bringing in the general, and then nobody really addressing anything or talking about it in a way that is, seems righteous. So, but you're saying that you have hope in Isaac. Is that what I'm hearing, or no? Because I have a hard time feeling that he's going to do the right thing. But that was always our hope, is like, well, I'm sure Isaac will, like, he's got to see this. He's got to know, he's got to do the right thing. But I have seen no hint of that.
Yeah. Maybe I can answer it this way. I absolutely believe that Isaac wants to do the right thing. So if I can answer it that way, I want to have, and honestly, Jane Doe is one of the ones leading us in this. To have, I know this is going to be hard to hear, to have mercy. I know that word mercy, to have mercy for the process. So I have a 2-year head start, and the trauma to my life of having to realize it's incalculable. I would have days where I got the kids off to school, and I don't know if, I'm sure some listening have had grief like this. And I would lay in my bed, and I would have to scream, cry, and rock. Like, I want people to know that they're not alone. I have places in my hair that I've pulled my hair out. I found that I was just pulling my hair as I found, like, out this stuff about Mike. And, I have a bald spot on my head. I want the people listening to understand the levels of trauma. And so for my brother Isaac and for Joseph, I want to remember that is happening to them. Yes, there's things that they should have seen earlier and decisions they should have made. But does that make sense? So I'm not excusing, but I am wanting to say, like, I needed to be understood in the depths of the agony, and I want to give that. So I believe that their hearts are to get there.
Yeah.
I really do. I don't know that they can. I'm not saying, So
well, and even and Elizabeth, even when you say the hearts are to do the right thing and their hearts are to get there, I believe that the majority, if not most, if not all of these guys actually do want to do the right thing, unless there's some of them that have things that they're trying to hide. And I just don't know if that's the case or not. I would love to believe that there's nothing to hide. I'd love to believe.
I don't believe that about Isaac. I will say that. I don't believe
Yeah, and I'm
that
not
about
even
Isaac.
saying about Isaac. I'm not saying about Isaac. I've always, the whole time I've actually thought, I worked for Isaac for a very, very short time. I don't even think he would remember, because I was like on the night watch and had to go to days to work in the youth for this short time. But I always liked him. He's just like, and still in my mind, he's just this young kid. And I'm sure he'd be like, you're a young kid. But in my mind, I'm just thinking like, he's just this young dude, but I'm thinking on the bigger picture. I know Dave and Stuart are supposedly not there, but I actually feel like they're there. And maybe I'm just a conspiracy theorist, but I feel like they're running the show a little bit, and I feel like Mike's not there, but it's like, so I just kind of wonder, like, okay, out of all these guys, who's just ready to say what Alan said and be like, well, I guess we all have to be investigated. That sucks, but let's do it. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, what? Yeah. Stuart, can you just say that? Like, Dave, can you just say that? Like, Isaac, can you just say that? Like, let's all just say that. Let's just say it. Like,
and I think that's kind of too where I'm thinking about the thing about Isaac, about wanting to do the right thing. It's like, okay, but is it possible if Mike's still running the show? Is it possible if Stuart is still there and Dave is still there? Is it possible? And
I will say I am confident that Mike is not influencing. I'm confident Mike is not influencing Isaac and Joseph.
Makes sense. But that makes sense. Would you be so confident to say this? I mean, well, I'll say I think because they're all a tight-knit group. Dave and Isaac are buddies for 20 years, that the boys club thing. And so they're clearly just chatting as buddies and getting counsel. And that's fine. I'm not even saying that's wrong. I'm just saying it is what it is. Yeah. And then Stuart and Dave are buddy, I know that's the way they run things. So anyway, it's just, I just wish I could see from Stuart, hey, you know what? instead of like, it's unbiblical to bring a third party in, we can do this internally, due process. It's like, okay, cool. That can be a biblical statement if you wanted to make it be, but guess what could be biblical? Open up the books and let everybody see the truth, transparency, light. That could be biblical if we want it to be biblical too. Like, just why don't you say what Alan said? Dave, why don't you say what Alan said? Like, I'd actually go all the way back around and be like, wow, these guys are great. You know, I'd take back everything from the last 6 months, but
we
right now I don't
much.
trust these guys as far as I can like take a step, you know. It's just, it's sad. It's really sad. But
and why don't we take it another step? And I'm going to get real radical. Why do we need to wait for lawsuits to actually settle with victims? I believe that IHOP should be proactively seeking out ways to make there's no amends, but to settle, give something. There's so much property that can be liquidated. I think Hernhut itself is like, the property is worth $10 million or something. I mean, there's so much that could be liquidated. And so I'm calling my brothers to proactively, if there's something that stops lawsuits, it's actually doing the right thing and showing this proactive mercy. How could we in the church, how could this be that people, lovers of Jesus, followers of the Bible and God, are vying to figure out how they can avoid lawsuits when we know that Mike has done this, and we know that those buildings are bought with blood money, in a sense, that I helped raise. I mean, it's it's just it's terrible. We should be proactively doing that. Mark, the amount of money that he has, it is close to bankrupt him, you know, and Mike has a hand in that. Mike has a hand in the destruction of his life. And come on, let's just do that.
Yeah, and you know, I think for the devil's advocates out there, or just the, you know, whatever you want to call them, Bicklebots, whoever they are, and even just the passerby that's kind of looks and goes, oh, just, you know, these people just want money. You know what I mean? That's what they say. Oh, these victims just want money. These Jane Does just want money. And I'll say it's a real big conversation since the 2017, 2018 and Hollywood Me Too and all that stuff, where I think naturally the conservative mindset, and I'm saying conservative political mindset, does say, I don't believe that because I saw this come out at the most opportune times to hit this candidate or that one or this one. So it becomes that conversation. And what I watch happen is that the same people that said those things in 2017, 2018, 2019 are the same types that say, like, there's no way. And I'm just going to say, I was that way. Frankly, I'm going to say that publicly. I was that way because I just thought, well, it didn't make sense to me. You know, it didn't make sense until I saw it hit the backyard. And I was like, wait, what? Yeah. And then I went, oh my gosh, what have I missed in my thinking about this issue in particular? I'm not talking about politics overall, because this is actually not a political issue at all. Mm-hmm. It's a human issue that hits the church, it hits the secular arena, it hits your business, it can hit anywhere, it hits families. You know, this issue of SA is such a, whether a victim is credible because they've had a pristine life, or whether they could seem like they've had a terrible life. Guess what? It doesn't matter at the end of the day. If somebody is coming out saying this happened to me, the fact that they're saying it is such a huge move for them to have the courage to say it.
Absolutely.
And so they're not after money. Most of them realize they're not going to get $1, because look what's going on right now. You're not going to get jack usually. You just get drugged through the mud, you get doxxed, the dollars don't fix a thing. They help pay for some of the issues you have to deal with and go through in your life because of what these people did. But I just have to go on the rant to say, number one, you know, as a man, I'm sorry for not believing the women that have said see, nobody had ever told me these things until these things started happening and we became a voice in this. And then people would come to us and tell us these stories. And I would just go, oh my gosh. But I'll just say, even as a conservative man, which I still am, I'm sorry that you're not believed. Yeah. But I believe that the majority, if not almost all, are legitimate stories that need to be heard, not publicly all the time, but the money doesn't fix the stuff, you know, like even being believed doesn't fix it. But you know what? It's a step in the right direction just to be heard. And so I just want to say for everybody out there in the church world and not, and that's just listening, I'm sorry for the men that didn't believe you. And I'm just
And there's no
proud of,
perfect
yeah,
victims,
yeah,
right? I think that's one thing I've heard some pain talking about, well, some of the Jane Does that you guys talk about, you talk about their pristine character and da da da. What about the people that maybe don't have that? Are they believed too? And one of the guys working with us that's an expert, he said it's actually, for those of us who understand sexual abuse, it's the opposite. Is when someone is so broken and their life is so broken and they have, maybe a string of horrible stories, and maybe they even now have mental instability, and it makes us believe them more because they are the perfect target. That's what abusers target. Now, Mike was a weird one. He actually had he has a different target. He likes the best and the brightest and the smartest. But I mean, he's kind of I think in a whole nother category. But I just want to say that publicly too, that we recognize that.
yeah.
And being believed has nothing to do with what kind of pretty bow is on your life
Yeah.
or not.
Well, I think we've taken your entire evening, and we could probably go another 2 hours, but I think we'll wrap here.
Good. Yeah.
Christina, do you have any final questions or thoughts?
Well, just thank you so much for your time and sharing your story
Yeah.
and just everything. And I know we had a list of questions from Facebook too that we didn't even get to. So, and people were already requesting this be like a 3-part series. They were saying one won't be enough. So if you're open to coming back sometime, maybe we can answer do like a Q&A.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
Let's
that'd
do
be
a
cool.
Q&A. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that'd be
I would
great.
love to.
I do have one last thing, Elizabeth. Sorry to keep you, but one thing that people did say that I think would be worth you speaking to is, what would you say to the people who are still at IHOP right now? Not the employee, but the people there, the staff, the interns. What would you say to them?
I think I have a little bit different answer than some others, and because of my own story, there's a whole part that I didn't talk about with kind of a losing in a lot of ways a family member over IHOP stuff, and the way that they tried to extract me and tried to get me to see many years ago, and it didn't work. You know, I wish I would have listened and could have heard. It didn't work, and a lot of that had to do with the approach. I just feel that it's a very sacred process for each person, and so I would ask for people to be very merciful. There's people inside that are still there, that their lives are wrapped up in even practical things like, when does the medical insurance end? And it's through IHOP, and I have a condition, I need these medications, and I don't have a job to go. There's so many things. So I would say I would just beg for a gentle approach of it. Every person, it's going to be such a sacred timeline because it is so massively life altering to have to accept these things and then change your whole life. Now, there's some others that I think they can and should make the decision earlier, and they're maybe need a little dose of courage, right? To stand up and say, no, that, like the stuff that came out, I don't believe that that's not true. That is true. I'm not going to listen to you tell me that was everything in that article was untrue, and because there are still, I think, some leaders within IHOP that are trying to get people to believe that a lot of it's not true. There's also a huge narrative about the AG, which is super unfortunate. It's one of those tragic things of all this that was seeded. And so what it does is it keeps people in limbo, right? And so I would say don't let Mike have your mind and your soul, because his goal always has been is to keep everybody guessing. And as long as people don't really know, oh, are these guys right or are these guys right, then he can have power, right? And so we actually know this, that he hopes that there's the Lathrop investigation, and he hopes that the AG does one and that there's dueling reports. That's what he wants. He wants there to be the perpetual dueling realities, because that's where he thrives. in the middle. And he knows his gig is do not give up. He knows he's going to outlast everybody.
Yeah.
I think he told his family, like, just hold on, this will blow over in a year, so everybody will forget. Then that is the MO. So I would say beat Mike at his game. Don't stay in ambiguity. Figure out the truth, but then have your sacred process for when you extract your life, or if you decide that for you it's okay to stay for a little while. I think that's going to get more and more tenuous, personally, for that to be okay. But
this is another question now. So do you have any words for Christina and I, as far as just like, or anybody that's reporting on this or like investigating this, or I'm not gonna say we're not mostly investigating, we're just reading investigations, but like sometimes in my mind I'm just like, okay, press because I know that's Mike's game, is just like, well, we'll outlast him because this is his livelihood, this is everything he does,
Right.
And so, but information is power, and information in the minds of people would always be like, well, the court of public opinion doesn't mean anything. I'm like, no, it means everything. It actually can mean more when it's in the face of everyone in the body of Christ. So I don't know. Do you have anything to say to those that are the armchair investigators, for one?
Yeah.
People digging, they only have so much time in their day, but they dig a little bit, they put out some information. Then you've got channels like Brother John Elving and Torn Curtain, and just different people that are trying to expose this for Julie. Like, anything you could say to all those folks?
Yeah, I want to say thank you. Even though I know that we have not been able to come out and publicly be like, hey, let's all, call ourselves one big team. There's a lot of reasons for that. It's almost like hostage negotiations that happen in the background. Yeah. And so we just gotta kind of keep this team like, all right, it's us at the table. We're going to work this out. But we're just very thankful. And we have lots of conversations about that. Very thankful for the absolute persistence, because you are right. The game is that we will all give up, and we will not give up. We will not give up, because most of the people that are carrying this have their own story. So, and they have somebody else's story. So it's this double, beautiful, painful burden. And I don't believe that any of us are going to give up. And so I would say that we're grateful for you, thankful for you. We can't say that we can't endorse every single thing, but to us, that's we kind of talked about it in the beginning. It's like this little PS at the bottom. And I think if we can stay in this space where you don't demand that we endorse everything about everything that each one of us believes, right? And we can just say, we're talking about this right here. Yeah. Okay. We're on the same team and we're talking about this right here. Because if we start pulling apart everybody's belief system, we're done.
It's a mess. Yeah. Everybody wants
I will tell you that. Mike hopes we will. Mike hopes we will turn on each other, and that we'll start, devouring each other. So I would say, keep our eye on exposing this and seeing it through to the end together. And so we see you. We're so grateful that you're out there. You'll notice that it's mostly you guys. It's mostly, right? It's not the AG. I get on there a little bit. Jono's thrown out a comment or two out, but it's not us that are pushing the social media press. And it has to be. It's a very important part of the whole thing. So thank you.
Thank you for just hopping on this show with us. I know that's I know it's a big deal that you would come on our show, even that you would talk to the AG and say, can we do this? And you did it. And we appreciate them, endorsing that and you jumping on, and it means a lot to us. I think we'll wrap here, and we'll probably have a Q&A soon, but thanks so much, Elizabeth. We appreciate you.